Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today I want to talk about a little NAS that I've been keeping an eye on for the better part of 6 months here in the background of NASCompares. Now, those that follow the channel may have known that last year, in about September time 2024, when I was over at IFA in Berlin, I saw a small little NAS startup called Zettlabs. They were in the market to launch their new Local AI NAS system. Now, AI is a phrase that's getting thrown around all over the shop. I know, I'm as guilty as anyone. But locally deployed AI is something that is becoming incredibly relevant. It is the idea that we're sitting on decades of data in our business or home environment, and we want to be able to access it as quickly and efficiently as possible without having to retroactively rename, relabel and recatalogue literally decades of data. Now, the answer to many is utilising AI and LLM services, remote ones like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Gemini and the rest. However, a lot of these are remote based. They're based in the cloud, they're based externally, and therefore you have to upload all your data to someone else's server, something a lot of us are not a huge fan of. That is where local AI comes in. Many users want to be able to take advantage of all of the accessibility benefits and the retrieval benefits of locally deployed AI LLM services using a system with no internet access. Their data is on a NAS and they use those services to catalogue, access and save a bunch of time and energy. And that's what these systems are targeted towards. Now, before we go any further, and I haven't decided whether to call this a review yet, this product does not feel finished. It is going to crowdfunding. There are means to get hold of one of these at a much lower price with some deposit systems, and I'll talk about that towards the end of the video. Again, engage with that, do nothing, it's up to you. But I'm going to go straight out the gate straight away. 1, the brand has not paid me for this video. 2, they've supplied hardware and information about this, and I'm personally quite intrigued by this solution, but these are all my views. There's been no money changing hands. But more importantly, when I say this, I don't think this product is finished yet. And in the 6 months I've monitored it, this is the version I received about 5 months ago. This is their first generation, D6. And this is the newer generation one I received about a month ago, which has had a lot more improvements since then. But it still doesn't feel finished. The hardware feels finished, but the software has still got a ways to go. It's better than it was, but I'll talk about that more later on in the video. But before we get into the weeds of the AI stuff here, which let's face it is the universal selling point of this device, what about their hardware profile? Because a lot of you want to know what exactly you're going to get for your bunts. Now, at the moment, there are 4 different configurations: the D4, the D6, the D6 Ultra, and the D8 Ultra. But for the ease of access, we're going to break it into 2 categories: the the standard class series, the D4 and the D6, and the Ultra class. This is the D6. I haven't played with the Ultra. That's going to be a very important distinction later on when we're talking about the software. But in terms of hardware, it's worth highlighting that in terms of CPU profile, the Ultra series is way higher spec, and it allows for all of the AI and LLM services that they are promising on this solution. I should say them, not me. That means all of them can be deployed in the system, whereas this one running out with an RK3588 CPU inside, that is an 8-core processor performing up to 6 tera operations, also arriving with 16 gig of DDR4 memory, the maximum. This system has to leverage local system resources to a small degree. And by that I mean, I would say 4 out of the 6 main AI services that are supported by Zettlabs on these systems, 4 of them are completely deployable within the NAS, and 2 of them require the client application for Windows and Mac systems and some local system resources. We'll get to that later on. Now, the Ultra series, that arrives with that Intel Ultra processor, the 125H. Now, that is a 14-core, 18-thread processor, supporting up to 34 tera operations per second, or TOPS. Also arriving with 16 gig of DDR5 memory, supporting up to 96 gig non-ECC memory there. Also, that one arrives with a 256 gig SSD and 2 M.2 NVMe slots at Gen 4x4, whereas this one has a 32 gig eMMC storage module inside for the operating system and 1 additional M.2 NVMe slot inside. Now, I could harbour and bang on about traditional NAS features and functionality, will just a little bit, because I think a lot of you want to know what this is like as a day-to-day NAS, not just the AI stuff, even though that is almost certainly the main reason people will probably for this rather than competitors in the market. It supports the standard RAID configurations there. This one doesn't have ZFS, it runs on BTRFS. I've got no confirmation or hands-on with the Ultra series. Probably that's going to run BTRFS and not ZFS rather than running two different software profiles side by side. But on that BTRFS, you've got the standard RAID configuration 0, 1, 5, 6, 10, etc. On top of that, in terms of hardware design, I really like the design. I will say, much like my reactions to the Ugreen NAS systems, they have gone for their own sense of style here, and fair play. Notwithstanding, the drive bays are incredibly distinct there, although some of the writing and description on there looks a little bit out of place. If we look at some of the trays, big bulky trays, I've already got a bunch of drives I put inside. Again, nice, healthy, easy to use trays, bulky, holds them in place, a little bit of shock absorption, all going into a SATA backplane inside. The front of the system has an SD card slot, both a SD3 and an SD4 card slot there, based on the base. There's also USB 3, two USB 3 ports there on the front. That's Gen 3.2 Gen 1, so 5 gigabits per second on both a USB-C and a USB-A. There's also a TF4 slot on there as well. But what's really intriguing, alongside a physical copy button, which you can actually configure quite a lot in the software, there is an LCD panel there on the front and an LED lighting rig there on the front. That LCD panel, I would argue, is one of the most informative LCDs I've ever used on a NAS system. Notwithstanding, it gives me the standard IPs, it gave me real-time resource information there, real-time performance information there, and I would say almost rivaled Unify in the amount of information being portrayed and displayed via the LCD panel there in real time. Now, in terms of port connectivity on the rear, again, we are talking about the standard class model here, and this one has a 1 gigabit Ethernet port, a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port there. It also has USB 2 ports there on the back for KVM setup, although I didn't really see much in terms of HDMI output on this. Maybe that'll integrate later into the software. There is an HDMI 4K 60 frames per second port and a power button there. Now, the Ultra Series device, the Ultra Series has pretty much all of that, and on top of that, dual 10 gig Ethernet port. It also has USB 4 connections there. There was no mention of direct USB 4 Thunderbolt IP direct connectivity there. On top of that, it also has an expansion port there, SFF8654, that allows you at Gen 4 times 8 speed to add on external expansions easily, not a traditional PCIe upgrade slot. And again, remember, the Ultra Series is available in a 6 and an 8 bay configuration and has those two Gen 4 M.2 NVMe slots as well. So a decent amount of base level performance potential and expandability. And in terms of actual chassis design, the system has vent panels and two different kinds of front panel that you can apply to the system that, again, are quite nice. It only arrives in the one color, but is actually quite nice. It's a nice, unique design. Pretty much all of the hardware is based there at the base. When we remove this panel, I will say, compared to the first generation and the second generation of this device that I've played with in the last 6 months, there has been a scale up in the design internally there. But again, it's that 12.5 Ultra Series model that I'm concerned about in terms of design. I'll say this did work quite well in terms of operation and noise and, temperature. But again, this wasn't the beast system of the two, so it's hard to make a judgment call there. I'm not going to go deep dive into the performance on this yet, because realistically, as mentioned in the intro, I don't think this product is finished yet, and they themselves have not said this is the finished product. It's still going through continued development there before it goes onto the crowdfunding there, before they can really scale out. Now, When I was in China in March 2025, visiting lots of different Chinese brands, again, we've talked about it in other videos, it was completely off our own back. I actually visited their HQ there, met a lot of the team, and we conducted a Q&A for all of the questions that I correlated in the background of NASCompares and off the back of the previous video from last year at IFA. Hopefully that video is going to go out soon, and it answers a lot more questions about the development of this device, who is behind it, their intended roadmap, feature set, and more. But let's dig into that software just a little bit before we go deep dive into the software on screen. Realistically, you're coming into this because you've heard this is a NAS with local AI deployment. How does that realize? Now, I will be going into the software in a moment, but the TLDR is the following. Number one, if you do upload, crap loads of videos and audio and document files and photos onto this, what does it do with that information? Well, number one, it will automatically rip transcription from video and audio. So what that means is all of the in my case, all of the YouTube videos that I'll upload to this, all of my early recordings I'll upload to this, it actually immediately starts ripping transcription from all of those in the background, as long as I put it into the designated folders that the AI can access. The same goes for audio files as well. So every single file I'm uploading onto it, it is creating a textual database of all of the information it has garnered. The same goes for photos that I'm uploading onto it, be they domestic images, photos I have taken, vectors, all that kind of stuff, PNGs, JPEG, RAW, the works. It will then catalog with AI identification of those images, as well as ripping text OCR from every image you upload. Now, again, we talk about more in the Q&A about the efficiency of that. We'll talk about that more in another video, but just to allude to some of that in the Q&A, number one, obviously that will have an impact on system performance, and they go into a little bit more detail about the optimization of that in the Q&A. But as mentioned in the intro, in the case of the Ultra Series device, all of that is being done internally, and because of that dedicated TOPS performance of that CPU, much like integrated graphics when doing something like Plex, when it needs to do the AI-based operations, it's going to use that part of the CPU. And because the Ultra Series has a larger proponent built into that CPU to get the job done, things are done a lot quicker, more efficiently on that Ultra Class 1. It's not to say that this RK CPU inside doesn't do the job, but just keep in mind you're going to have to scale those down, and therefore the time it takes for it to get done will be longer. Now, on top of that, once all of that data that's inside the system has been crawled, transcribed, and catalogued internally, remember, all offline, no internet service doing it, it's all being done inside the system. That's when the fun stuff happens, because then you can use the AI chat and document analysis features there to pull that information. You can ask it to give you that information. Now, you'll see this later on in the video, but one of the really cool things is most NAS brands out there have AI photo recognition. They've got facial recognition, they've got object recognition. But you know what very few of them have? They will tell me, here are photos of food, here are photos of pets, here are photos of people, here are photos of cars. But if I actually say to the system, show me pictures of people, men stood next to cars outside, not only will it show me all of the photos that conform to those text words that I've looked for, but on top of that, it will allow me to create new categories. So rather than relying on the hard-coded object recognition the system is presenting, it will allow me to create my very own that are built to my own specifications. And I'll show you some examples later on. But that's where that semantic search comes in, because once you're searching the NAS, it's searching the NAS based on all of that catalogued information, all of that crawled, analysed information from not only documents, but from the photos, text in the photos as well, but on top of that, from the videos and the audio. And again, locally based in the system. Alongside that, this system is also working on one of the things that I've asked for a very long time from any NAS brand that talks about AI. And I'm talking about all of them. QNAP Synology, I'll talk about Ugreen as well. TerraMaster as well, I know are entering into this field as well with third-party LLM kind of testing there in the background. I want to be able to control the NAS via human commands. I am a tech head. I understand a lot of this terminology, but a NAS may be deployed in a system environment where it may be heavily reliant on a system admin. Having a local-based AI that has, on a local-based NAS, the ability to understand common language will allow, for example, hopefully down the road, me to be able to say to the NAS, can you do me a favor, pull me up all of the files related to staff that were employed between 2010 and 2013. Now, if you know your way around Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, you may be able to pull that information up over time. But I want to be able to ask that to this system in a single chat window in human language. Now, for the record, this doesn't do that yet. But what it does do is slowly build upon NAS controls. I was able to get it to control the fan speed. You'll see it later on. Control the lighting system there. Reboot the system. Check for firmware updates. I was able to utilize it to create a new shared folder, create a new user. Again, it is by no means perfectly refined yet, and it seems like that's what they're moving towards, so I'm not going to give them full credit yet. But it's the only NAS I've used yet that allowed me to use a chat window to ask the system to do things and it do them. It's still very early days, but if that's where they're going to go with this, that could be a game changer for me. But saying all the things it can do and the things what I hope it can do is not enough. Let's hop onto the Zettlabs GUI that this NAS arrives with to show you what it can do currently and what I hope it can do for the future, and unfortunately what it can't do now. So here we are on the desktop of my Windows VM here, hence why you can see activate Windows. Ask anyone that runs a lot of VMs, that might as well be tattooed. Carrying on, as you can see here, we've got the desktop here of the NAS running. Now this part of the video, when we're talking about software, let's face it, there's two kinds of users that are going to look at the Zettlabs NAS here. There's going to be those that are looking at the AI services there, and there are going to be other users that want to know how this system's going to be running day to day as a NAS. So let's start with the day-to-day stuff just to get it out of the way. And I'll say right now, although the software has certainly improved on what I saw 6 or 7 months ago, it's still not perfect. There's a few little bits and bobs that I think they're still waiting to add into there. And although, you know, the very good foundations are there, I will say that the NAS software has still got a little way to go. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, we go into the settings menu here. Got more information about the device. You can check for the updates as you would expect. Creating new users, and we'll talk about that a little more later on with adding users with the AI. You can create admin users, standard users there, assign different permission settings and more. Pretty much what you'd expect from any NAS software. When it comes to the storage, create those multiple pools, creating individual new pools, kind of going through the data protection, sector performance differences. It's all kind of rolled in there as you would expect, as well as analytical information about individual drives and smart tests that you can perform. Now with the individual bits of hardware testing, and finding out more about the analytics there in the background. Again, some of these can be adjusted with the AI services that we'll talk about later on, but it's all fairly standard stuff there. And again, time settings there, file settings. Again, we can use different protocols, FTP, Samba, that sort of thing. They're all accessible and enableable there, as well as adjusting the network, the MTU, setting a lot of the IP stuff there. Again, there's multiple LAN ports, remote accessing via their own access services. There's no support currently, from what I could see, of things like Tailscale if you wanted to use other third-party remote access or VPN tunnel connected services. And that's really it. The AI settings and HDMI output, at least in this version of the software, didn't allow for a huge amount of customization, but later on we are going to be coming back to that with the desktop client device. But general day-to-day use of the system is pretty much what you would expect. For example, in the App Center here, this is really a large collection of containerized applications there that are ready for one click. So again, all of these are third-party. So for example, if you want to add two-factor authentication, because it's really important to have that, and kind of disappointed it's not available out the gate on this system, and I have to use a Docker application in order to use this service. If I want to use it, it's one click, bang, and you are in. The same goes if I wanted, for example, to take advantage of things like Plex Media Server, MB Jellyfin. Again, one click and you're in there. But just keep in mind, again, these aren't first-party apps. You are running on containerized applications there. When it comes to the file browser there, it's pretty straightforward. You can go ahead, create shared folders really easily. There's the option for copy and pasting, cutting, that sort of thing, thumbnail generation. If we go into this mixed folder back up here, and do you know what? While I'm here, let's go ahead into this test folder here. In fact, let's create a brand new folder. Can you create a new folder and call this one test 2? And then from there, I'm going to go ahead in our test 2 folder, open that up, go into my video collection there. Let's go in and find ourselves a cheeky little file to play with. Let's go with these 2 files here. Let's drag and drop the folder into here. We're going to come back to these 2 files later on, by the way, because it will be important later. But if that's straightforward, again, pretty much what we've got used to at this point in terms of adding files, you know, sharing, that kind of stuff. So if we go in and create and try and share one of those files, we can go ahead, share this folder. We can go for external sharing, internal network sharing. Again, select individual users if you choose, or you can go ahead and share files externally, create those validity periods, and you can manage these shares that you create here on the main side panel. Again, I'd like a few more options to configure those, such as locking to an IP, perhaps locking them to a certain number of uploads or downloads, or just read only. But again, these are fundamental things that I think we've got used to, and this is still a growing NAS software base that they're developing in-house there. So I'm prepared to give them, at least on this prototype for now, before this hits crowdfunding proper, a little bit of benefit of the doubt. The same goes if we want to go ahead for kind of a lot of the scanning and the images in there and the automated tagging measures. So for example, we've got the audio files there and we go in and it breaks it down into those labels. But when you go to the AI categories, these are the ones that are on there. Again, we can create those new categories there if we choose. But again, I'm not sure how well these are implemented. So for example, if I go for the word pet, is that going to just create a new one and then scan for it? Or is it going to go ahead and use some of the catalogued information? It looks like it has. So for example, let's create a brand new one. Let's go for chips. Let's find out, and now it's going to scan. As you can see, now it's finding that because of that AI recognition. Now, again, you could do this to quite a lot of insane variables. Let's go ahead and just use the word party. And as photos are being uploaded to the system, it's using that AI to catalog them. So for example, if we go ahead with an existing photo here, let's go ahead with this dippy photo I took of myself, and I was getting ready for a passport photo. And as you can see, it's gone ahead and already started, quote unquote, learning the content of this image. So if we go for something a little bit more mixed, so for example, if we go for this one here, the toy car, double click that, we can see in there at last start, it's got learned, it's got OCR trying to read it. But if we go ahead and create a new subcategory in those AI categories, so let's go for this one and put the word car. Again, I know I should be capitalizing here, and it hasn't found it. So again, how much of it can access is interesting to see, and that was a toy car in low def, but still I quite like this idea, at least for now, and I know they're hopefully tweaking this offline AI to do more, but I'm pleased with what I'm seeing, at least in terms of customization of what I want AI intelligent photo recognition to provide versus the predefined defaults of other NAS brands right now. But interestingly, it's how far you can go with these. So for example, if I put man next to tree, go for that one in there, and boom, we've got pictures of Eddie there next to a Christmas tree, and it's obviously learnt that information there. Eddie, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. But then you've also got videos, which is really important here. This is me in New York, near the Statue of Liberty when it was snowing. There's me, there's trees. Now, I have not catalogued that. In fact, the file is called Katie and Rob New York, America trip. I've not added any of those tags. It's managed to find that information, and that's really, really impressive given that that was a video file. I mean, how far do you go? Let's have a look. Let's put looking out the window, people on the beach. That's me living by the seaside. And boom, we've got a picture of feet on the beach. There's my feet in a photo. Again, no tags at all. Alternatively, we can go down to the bottom and there's our video of me walking along Southend Pier, walking along the beach. It is analogically, it's utilized those tags that it's garnered from AI utilization here on that video, and it's in real time on the local area network with no internet access. Again, that's the thing I love about this. And the next stage of that AI integration goes into that ZAI. Now, this is where I'm quite intrigued, and we'll get onto doc analysis and chat later on, but at least now let's talk about these two, where one is for searching the system in a certain way, and another one is for using shortcuts. Now, search, we've kind of already done that with the tags. So, for example, if I wanted to search this and find for man with a NAS drive, this will allow it to find a lot of that information. It should open it out into the file manager, and it will find the word NAS, it will find that, and as you can see, all of that. That's not hugely different to what we've already looked at there with that semantic search there. But it's this next one with shortcuts that really intrigues me. Now, this is what I've always wanted in a local AI-powered NAS that I can recommend to the less technologically versed. Unfortunately, it's still too early in development. Let's say I wanted to increase or decrease the fan speed on this NAS because of noise or temps. So if I put into here, for example, increase the fans, if I put that and then just tap enter and get close to the mic, as you can hear there and saw a notification on the background, it's now increased that fan noise. I've not had to, for example, putting the mic back down, go into the settings menu there, not knowing where anything is, go into hardware settings and find it within the fan option there. It allows me to organically and use human language to do so. So if I put decrease fan noise, that should lower down the fans. As you can see, it's going to bring it down. I can already hear the fans going down around me. Now, say I wanted to create a new shared drive or a new shared folder even. Let's keep it nice and user friendly. As you can see, that's not available right now. But if I want to, for example, create a new user, so create a new guest user, I can go ahead, add that in there, and it's going to guide me through the process to very easily create a new user. So if I put those passwords in there, enter that in, again, I can select a role. There'll be a common user. Go ahead, click create, and as you can see, it's now created that user, created the new account, and I could click there to find out more, or if I'd wanted to do it a normal way, go into the settings menu, go into user management, and there's that user we've just created there. Now, if I go for delete this new user, as you'll probably see, as you can see, it's asking us to confirm who it is, but again, we're not really getting it to be that intuitive yet. But it's what this represents, and if they can continue to develop on this basis, that I am interested in. It's just, this is the part of Local AI NAS that I'm the most interested in, and unfortunately, this is the thing where they're still a little bit behind the curve. I'm hoping they do more on this, but this is the thing that excites me more than anything else so far. Now, returning to the subject very briefly of day-to-day NAS use, let's talk about CoCard. Now, CoCard is what their backup application is. So, for example, if you want to create regular tasks, there's a USB drive that I've connected to the system. You can choose how you want it to back up, how and when, what the rules are. This is all fairly standard stuff. But what it adds to the fold is options such as connecting to a cloud service. If you add Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, you can sort it so that not only will it back up a USB drive to the NAS, but on top of that, it will automatically add a cloud backup if you choose to have it. The same goes if it's multimedia. You can choose to create a transcoded copy of media files going to the system automatically there. That's something I don't really see from many NAS brands. It's still nice to see. And the same goes, you can create custom automated transcode profiles as you add data to the system. Now, it does work in automatic. We've seen this in other NAS brands before, where if we choose different formats of drive being connected to one of those many ports, again, largely the same as we've seen before, again with uploading to the cloud or transcoding on the fly being options that are available to you. And there are customization options, but not absolutely loads there. And the settings are still very much in their early days. And it is a lot of those fundamental day-to-day features that are still in early development right now. As you can see, this is the available list of apps right now. There's a help area there, and we'll go on to clip in a moment, another lovely little area. But things like virtual machines, backups, the Creator Studio and Photos, or the dedicated applications, as you can see, are still on a timeline now. So it's going to be interesting to see how and when these get added, and if they can live up to some of the bold promises being made by the brand for the capabilities of this system in line with AI. As you can see, the other apps that I've already uploaded earlier on, such as Plex Media Server, are ready to deploy on the system via that one-click installation. Same goes with adding that two-factor authentication there, all of which are now being built in thanks to those container apps. But we can't really give a huge amount of credit to the brand there, given these are third-party apps running containerized. We've got the resource monitor there. We have got the task manager there in the background. There's some of that file we uploaded earlier that we'll get back to. Notifications have all been built in there while I was doing some hot disk testing. And you can configure small options, but just keep in mind again, no two-factor authentication, and there's still very early days when it comes to a lot of the system capabilities. You can definitely use, for example, this main search bar at the top rather than utilizing any of the proprietary window apps that we've already talked about. So, for example, if I want to show me videos about Plex, it'll be interesting to see if it understands a lot of the configuration of what we've talked about. And as you can see, there's a lot of my Plex videos there, all of them there in the background, and it's picked up that word that I've used in the middle of some of these videos. Now, that ability for the system to crawl real analytical AI recognized data from video as well as audio is what sets this system apart as a local NAS compared to other NASs that really only provide that feature on photos with things like OCR reading and facial and object recognition there. And a big part of that is the clip application. Now, do you remember earlier on when I opened up, I uploaded a video to the system? Let's go in, open with clip, let's go into that personal folder. Let's find it. It was in that folder we uploaded to called Plex 2, test 2. Now remember, you can see the clock at the bottom of the screen as well for some idea of this timeline. We can go in, let's go for the N305, click MKV, and boom. There is the transcription of everything I've said in that video. This was not locked in on that file. If we go ahead and go into the main file, it's a Windows file. It obviously has been broken in there, but there's no closed caption, there's no subtitles. It has done all of this locally without the internet. That really interests me, notwithstanding, because it means it can crawl all of this information easily for searching and data recognition, not just photos, but now music and video. But also, if I do want to pull information from this, for example, if I wanted to turn this into an article, now I've got that real-time information from my original recording. So if I uploaded 5 years of my YouTube videos onto this system, I've now got a huge dedicated, but more importantly, personalized archive of AI transcribed information on both audio, video, and photos on a local NAS. But finally, we need to talk about that client application here, because the D6 that I'm using right now, not importantly the D6 Ultra, if you want to use some of the other more generative AI services, right now you're going to need that client app for the D6, not the D6 Ultra. And this is where I think for many, the lines are going to be blurred between a local first-party AI and using third-party AI models. Now, logging into the client application, as you can see here, we'll go in, log in, keep ourselves logged into the client app. The client app looks pretty much identical to that of the web browser one we're running from earlier. We'll come back to that task manager in just a moment. But if we full screen it there, we can make our way into the Zettlab AI services there, and this is where our new document analysis and chat tabs have become available. Now, earlier on I mentioned about the lines being blurred a little bit about AI deployment. This is a very big example of that, because I'm not convinced that both of these aren't using external connections. I know that chat definitely is using outside the system resources, but I'm less convinced about doc analysis. I know it is using access to the NAS NAS data using the AI models. But again, because I'm running the client app, I'm having difficulty trying to isolate how much it's utilizing external access, because obviously when I'm using the client app, I am using the client app on a Windows machine on the local area network. It makes it very difficult to monitor how much data is actually being used. Likewise, if I go into the network connection here that we're connected to on the NAS there, so if we go ahead and believe we've got 2 different connections on the local area network, we could open those up and see data packets being exchanged. But again, I know that data is being exchanged already on the chat, and I also have to acknowledge this is a system in early development. So therefore, I can't be too critical because I'm not dealing with a finished product. I can only show you what I see. So for example, in the chat window there, before we go in, it's worth highlighting the model on the client application currently, and I don't know if this will change down the road. You use third-party AIs here. So as you can see, you can choose numerous AI LLM models there. Again, scaling in size all the way through. Presumably the bigger ones are going to be the ones that have got the most model general basis built into them there. I've downloaded and installed a bunch of them, as you can see here. So if I go ahead and select DeepSeek, so it'll make that the model that we're going to be utilizing for here. And chat, I'm not convinced like chat I'm going to be able to use locally. So to give you an example, if I look up who is Robbie from NASCompares, now I know this NAS has data on it about NASCompares. We'll leave it to do its thing, but for example, if I go in here and go into the documents here, go into the mixed files, and go into the docs area, I know there are documents of scripts, there's documents I've used in exchange with people, there's information and articles that I've uploaded onto the system, there's notes from Zooms that I've had with people, and there's even a best man speech that I helped write with a colleague of mine. So there's a lot of information about both Robbie and information about NASCompares in there. So when we're using the chat window here, a lot of this information, one could argue some of it could have been garnered from the local data on the system, but I'm pretty sure the majority of it has come from the internet there. Not all of it, but definitely some of it. Remember, some of this may have come from some of those articles, and some of it, as you can see, is kind of slightly errored there, which I assume may be a conflab issue there compared with the DeepSeek IIR that it's utilizing. But still, this doesn't feel like it's all in NAS system stuff, because if I go ahead and choose something that I know isn't on the system, such as what was Blue Peter, I know that Blue Peter was a TV show in the UK, and I know there's no information about Blue Peter on this NAS. So as you can see, it's remembering a character from Sesame Street. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I didn't watch Sesame Street and there was a character called Blue Peter. But let's have a little look. Let's open up a new tab for the hell of it. Blue Peter Sesame Street. Just to be confirmed. Yeah, apparently that was a character. So, again, fine, not what I expected it to see, but if anything, it only confirms that this is certainly using external assets via the local client application there in a visual sense. So, as useful as that is, and it is going to be useful to have a local AI model, lots of people use them, no one's going to utilize this app in conjunction with the NAS. You can get this app on your own. You can get third-party applications to deploy local AI tools on your system and use remote access models. But it's the document analysis that interests me more. So, for example, let's ask that same question. Who is Robbie from NASCompares? Now, this is where things differ. Now, I've spelt NASCompares wrong there, but it's still interesting it's found it, because now it's finding documents pertaining to references to Robbie at NASCompares. So, for example, this is an unraid discussion, a transcription from a video that I did with Space Invader 1 that was uploaded onto the system. Don't believe me? Let's go into the files. Let's go in and type ourselves into the personal folder and put in Space Invader 1. Those of you will remember that we did a video with Space Invader 1 where we talked about unraid and its conversion, stuff like that. And although it's found an OCR text there, and we go in for type, we go for video, we're going to be able to find references to Unraid and Space Invader 1 via contextual information and, of course, the original discussion I had with Ed. So, going back in, it's managed to use that crawled data that we had earlier on from the Riverside transcription, as you can see from the call I had with Ed over at Space Invader 1, and now it's passing and getting that information from those documents. Now, that interests me, because I like the idea of the data that I've got on the system being harnessed by this local client AI tool. I'd prefer it if I was using a more powerful NAS system like the Ultra that didn't need me to use a client application, but this, I believe, is data that's being pulled directly from the NAS. And what about if we look up, what is Blue Peter? Let's see if we're going to get an actual answer, no answer, or if it's going to hallucinate. Because again, there is no reference to Blue Peter on this NAS. It's finding documents which I presume are pertaining to the words Blue and Peter. So, for example, if we go ahead with something in the recycle bin there, we can see there's a README text, there's digital assets there, and presumably the word Blue and Peter is somewhere in this massively spanning document there. So we can come out of that. Then we go back in, what has it got to say for itself? And as you can see, the context doesn't seem to relate to Blue Peter. Blue Peter is a different topic altogether, since there is no information on Blue Peter in this context. So that's interesting, because that is clearly information that's only being sourced from the NAS, which is exactly what I want. I want to know that this is only going to be pulling data from the archival data on the NAS when I ask contextual question. So who is Eddie at NASCompares? So Eddie is my cohort here at NASCompares. He is the partner. It's us. It really is just NASCompares as us. You may have seen a reference there to a producer, something quite hilarious. That's my wife. But if we go ahead and pull in, we can see documents related to CES, documents related to the transcription. These are going to be transcriptions of notes and things that I did over in, as you can see, there's a letter regarding my invitation when I had to decline Ed's invitation and had to sub in my wife for CES invitations there. If we go in, we can find out some of the other reference materials it's found. So we can have a look about the NAS builder. The NAS builder is something Eddie designed, so that's going to have references to Eddie at NASCompares as well. and it really is from there. I kind of wish it was giving me a little bit more, like more choice of documents. Obviously, it's come up with multiple within different contexts. But as you can see, it's now finding references to it and trying to dig between the documents I've allowed the system to access there. But as you can see, in the reference points that I've provided, because there's no direct reference to Eddie at NASCompares, it's having difficulty sourcing that information live. Now again, it's going to be interesting to see, because frankly, Eddie is a lot bigger deal than that, and this isn't their slight towards Eddie. But still, nonetheless, it's still going to be quite interesting to see how this level of access to data on the NAS with AI analysis is going to be deployed within the system, not using a client application, because for me, this still doesn't feel particularly finished. Using the shortcut stuff is great, and I like that I can access this using the local client application. So for example, some of the stuff I did earlier on. So if I wanted to search the NAS now and I look for pictures, let's go for pictures of SSDs, and I do that there, this is using the client application, and this is searching the NAS. Remember, this isn't using the web browser. The web browser over here is doing nothing. We can look at the resource utilization, but in the client application, we're still accessing it with thumbnail generation, which is great, and still finding contextual searches and using that semantic search to find the information on the local client app. And again, I like that. But at the same time, I just want to know that when I'm utilizing those AI services here in the client app, I want it clearer. How much of this is being utilized with external assets? How many of these different models are, completely secured in terms of no external access, only on the NAS? I want to be able to ensure that that AI can only deploy local NAS assets on both of these options, not just document analysis. It's great that document analysis is accessing, some of the ripped transcriptions and some of the OCR read stuff and some of the audio stuff. That's good to see. But still, I think it's still very early days, and I think the development of this deployment using these third-party AIs, I think it would be better if they focused on a smaller number of AIs, maybe 2 or 3, rather than providing too much choice and too much hit and miss. But again, it's early development. It's just too early to see what this is going to eventually evolve into. Now, as I said in the intro, this product still doesn't feel finished to me. I like where they're going, and if it can do what they say it will do at launch, I'll be really happy. Now, it's going towards crowdfunding, and at the moment on their own website, they are doing early access pricing. So you've got your early adopter backing on crowdfunding, and prior to that, they've got this whole VIP pricing thing. Now, I'm going to talk about it here. I'm not going to endorse that. I'm not going to say it's bad either. I'm just going to put it out there what is there, because the pricing is quite interesting. Now, for the 4-bay model, it's $369. It's $449 for the 6-bay, $899 for the Ultra 6-bay, and $999 for the Ultra 8-bay. Now, that is that obvious early deposit pricing where you pay a $20 deposit. Now, those are obviously based on their own cut-down prices of $599, $749, $1399, and $1599 respectively for each tier. But I will say, for the Ultra Series devices, $899 and $999 for that hardware profile is pretty good. Now, I doubt they're going to support third-party operating systems out the box. Why would they when they're spending so much time on their software? But at the same time, that early bird pricing, if that product is legitimate, and keep in mind, heavy italic marks, that this is crowdfunding, not traditional retail, huge distinction there to be made, but still nonetheless, that pricing is pretty good for that ultra class model when you look at that hardware profile with or without the software capabilities of the AI. Now, again, the non-ultra model, I think, is too much of a grey area for many users, because how much of that is being done on local-based AI and how much of that local-based LLM that you're choosing from the many supported on your local system have external access, haven't external access? How much do you want to integrate a third-party AI LLM without 100% on-off features for how much you can externally access? I know is going to be a grey area for many of you, but the ultra-class model, if all of that deployment is in the system and you can download that external AI model to the system, or if they're going to roll in their very own one, rather than trying to target so many different of them, and too much choice for many is going to be confusing and also make it complicated for development. If they can roll in just a handful of small AI LLM models, double down, refocus the development towards those, and then have it all locally deployed on that Ultra Series model, that I would like to see, and that will be a game changer in the industry. Ultimately, as I say, this isn't really quite a review, more of an update on the more recent prototype. Do I think it's enough for you to back this project? I can't tell you to do that. I can't tell you to do it or not do it, because it's not a traditional retail product. But I will say what I have seen fills me with confidence. Going to their offices and speaking to the team fills me with confidence that these are a legitimate brand that are working towards an ideal product. They've got financial back in there. This isn't a moody fake product from what I can see, but again, I can only base that on what's physically here on the table, and I'm going to continue to monitor this product, because genuinely, when it comes to local-based AI deployment, they seem to be further ahead than everyone else right now. But how much of that is to the detriment of the general operating system of the NAS, we'll have to wait and see. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I'll add some links to their online resources right now. And again, I will continue to monitor this product, and significant feature updates. I'll bung some videos on this as well. But thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.